everyone and welcome back to my channel. So today for my final Christmas video of the year, I thought it'd be super fun to turn myself into one of my favourite Christmas characters. So today I'm going to be turning myself into the Grinch. The Grinch is my favourite Christmas movie, probably one of my favourite movies just in general as well, and we always watch it at Christmas time, or at least I do. I have done a Grinch makeup before. I will put some photos up on the screen. The first time I did it, as you can see, it was a bit rough. It looked Grinch-esque, but not near as good as I think I can get it. And then I also did it last year, which turned out better, but still not what I want it to be. I still want it to be better than that. So I thought it'd be fun to do the Grinch again this year, just to see how my skills have improved and use some different techniques to create the shape of his face, because it's not human-like at all, it's Grinchy. So not only am I going to be showing you how to apply the prosthetics and turn yourself into the Grinch today, I'm actually going to be showing you how I made the prosthetics, so how I sculpted them and how I made them from that sculpt. Now obviously if you're not interested in that, if you just want to see the end part, the part that doesn't take as much work, then you can absolutely skip to that. I'm going to put some timestamps along the bottom here for all the different sections of this, but I always think it's fun to kind of watch the full process from sculpting it to making the prosthetics to applying them to the final product. But you do you. I'm not going to judge you as long as you watch some parts of the video. Without any further ado, let's go ahead and get started. So the first step in sculpting these prosthetics is getting something to sculpt on top of. So for this, I'm going to make a kind of easier version of a Lifecast. Now, because I can't do a Lifecast on myself, I had to kind of find a way around it. So I'm using a paper mask that's similar to like the female face shape. So it should have the same proportions as my face. So what I did was cut the string off the back, covered the eye holes, and now I'm putting it into a Tupperware box lined with a towel, just to give it some stability in there, because we're pouring plaster into this. If you don't, the sides of the mask will just kind of flow out, which is not what you want. You want to try and keep it as rigid in its shape as possible. And now I'm going to be using Plaster of Paris. I mixed that up with some water. I made it quite thick and gave it a good mix around. And then I just poured this into the mask. So I did 2 batches of this because I didn't have a big enough bowl to do one solid one. So I did 1 batch and then mixed up another one and poured that over the top very quickly, because this sets really, really quick. And then I just tapped it on the surface of my desk just to get rid of any of the air bubbles. Now you want to let that set, and then kind of almost just before it's set completely, I started to scoop out the inside of it, just because this is quite heavy, so you want to try and lessen the weight of it, and it also makes it a bit easier to handle. And then once it was almost completely set, I started to peel the mask off. So this sets really quickly, and you can tell when it's set because it warms up. So I just peeled the mask off and then used some sandpaper to get all of the paper mask off and to smooth out any ridges. The ridges don't matter so much because we're mainly using this for the proportions of the face rather than the shape, but you still want to try and make it as smooth as possible. So now on to sculpting the prosthetics. So what I first did was sketched out the kind of area of the prosthetics that I was going to make. So I'm going to make a nose piece and a forehead piece, and now I'm applying some Vaseline all over just to make sure that I've got a smooth surface to work off of, so that the Plaster of Paris won't absorb any of the clay, and I'm just taking away some of the excess with a tissue. And now I'm going in with some oil-based clay and starting to build up the density of my prosthetic. So you want to build up the general shape of it first, and then you can go in and create the detail that you want. So I'm just using layers of clay, blending them in with each other. It's better to use small bits of clay and then blend them together. It's just easier to work with. So you just want to build up the general shape. Because the Grinch's face is quite disfigured, I had to build up quite a lot of height around the face. So you just want to take your time with this and make sure all the clay's edges are blended in together. You can use your fingers for this, and you can use some sculpting tools. I would say if you're blending it into the clay, use a wooden sculpting tool, because metal ones will ruin your face cast. But yeah, just build up small section by small section using wee blobs of clay and just placing it on and blending it in together, and the natural heat from your fingers will make it easier to blend the clay. You can also use some sculpting tools to cut back or refine any areas of your sculpts, add some more detail in. I know this looks very strange right now, but it works out eventually. But I just use this to kind of create the creases and the folds in the Grinch's snout area. And then I did this on the forehead as well and created quite a raised brow effect. Now I'm going in and kind of refining the surface using a sculpting tool that is kind of like a mascara wand, but it's more pointed. And I just ran that over the clay in different directions. Now I'm using a small metal kind of rake tool to run it over the clay. This just kind of helps to smooth it out and give it a wee bit of texture. We are going to be using latex, so latex doesn't pick up as much texture as, say, a silicone or a gelatin would, so it won't look as skin-like, but it will still pick up some so that it won't be solid latex. And I'm going in with just a black stipple sponge and really making sure that that edge of the clay is really thin. It has to be super thin so you get thin edges. You should barely be able to feel the difference between the clay and the Plaster of Paris mould. And then just to make sure those edges are smoothed out even further, I'm going in with some Vaseline and running that over the edge just to blend them out into the clay, and I use my fingers and a brush to do this. And then finally I just went in with some 99% alcohol and just did a quick wash of this over the clay. This just helps to slightly melt down any rough edges that might be on your sculpt and just take away any bits of clay that haven't quite moved from the main sculpt yet. And now it's on to making the prosthetics. So I let that alcohol just sink in and kind of evaporate for a while, and now I'm going in with liquid latex. So I'm going in with a sponge and stippling a really thin layer of that all over the area of the prosthetic, making sure to keep the edges super thin. I'm letting that dry using a fan, or then I used a hairdryer because I was getting impatient. And then you just want to powder that once it has fully dried, and you're going to repeat that process of latex, dry, powder. So I did about 7 layers, but the most outer edge is only 1 or 2 layers thick, because you want your edges to be super thin, and you want the main density to be in the centre of your prosthetic. So then once everything is dried and you've built up all your layers, you're going to find an edge, take your tweezers, peel it up very gently, and then you're going to peel it back whilst powdering underneath. You can just use baby powder for this, or translucent powder, whatever you have to hand. You just want to be super careful with this when you're peeling it, and make sure you powder it heavily so that the latex doesn't stick to itself. And just take your time with this. This is probably the most time consuming part, because you don't want it to rip. I've had them rip on me before. It's not fun, because then you have to do the entire thing all over again. And you can see there just how thin my edges are, which is really good. So then, because latex is quite hollow, I just built up the density on the inside using some cotton wool and liquid latex, which I use to do prosthetics quite a lot because it's just cheap and easy. But you just want to lay a bit of liquid latex down, pop some cotton in, and then cover it with liquid latex and kind of mould it into the shape, and make sure you really press it down into the shape of the prosthetic. But I did this in any areas that had to protrude off of the head, so the wrinkles, the eyebrows, the nose get a lot in it. But you just want to do that, and then I sat it back over the sculpt so that it was still keeping the shape and you're left with something like this. So just showing you that kind of texture there. So now we are on to actually applying it. So the first thing you want to do is make sure you've got a clean face, and you're going to cover your eyebrows because we're going to be putting a prosthetic over it. So just like I always do, glue through your eyebrows, comb them up flat to your head, wipe away the excess, and then powder. Wipe that powder away, do a couple more layers. I only did like one in a wee bit because we didn't really need to put makeup over top of it. And now I'm going to start gluing the prosthetic. So I'm using Pros-Aide, and because it's quite a large prosthetic, you want to do it in small sections. So I'm finding the midpoint of it and applying Pros-Aide onto my skin, onto the prosthetic, letting it dry, and then pressing it down. And then this way you've kind of got an anchor. And then I'm going in on either side and doing the same thing, letting it dry first and then pressing it down flat to the skin. And this just makes sure that you're putting it in the right place and that is actually going to stick. And then once I've done that, I'm going in with a trick that I learned. I can't remember who I heard this from, but you basically mix together a 50-50 ratio of Spirit Gum and 99% alcohol, and that's kind of, you can use it as an edge blender for latex. It's not going to be perfect because latex is really difficult to blend the edges of, but it works. If you don't have Spirit Gum, you could easily just go in and stipple some latex on the outside of the edge as well. And now, once everything is applied and it feels very secure, I'm going in with a mix of 2 greens just to get a good green base going. This is just a Supracolour from Kryolan. You could use any rubber grease paint, just whatever suits really. And then I'm just blending that all over using a sponge, and I'm going in with a brush just to get in any areas that I couldn't. The area around the eyebrows and the nose were very bunched together, so it was easier just to use a brush. And now I'm going in with an orange stipple sponge and a kind of mustardy yellow colour just to add a tiny wee bit of dimension to the face. And then I also went in with a white cream and applied this on any of the high areas of the prosthetic. Then I just went in with a dark brown black and applied this into the folds of the prosthetic. And then to blend that out, I just took the sponge and blended it over the top just to diffuse the edges. So then I went ahead and set everything with powder, and now I'm going in and just deepening these creases using a dark green and a black eyeshadow on a fluffy brush. You just want to keep building up the intensity. And then I went in underneath the eyebrow as well to make it look really sunken in and even more protruding because he needs to look angry. And then I also went in with a smaller eyeshadow brush and just black and put that in the very deepest points of the creases. And I also drew one on my cheek just to continue that effect so that it didn't just stop at the prosthetic. I also took this black on my lower lash line. I had a reference photo up and the GRINCH has got some heavy eyeliner going on, so smoke it out. And then I also put a yellow cream paint in my waterline, just to make it look like my eyes were yellow. I'm also putting contacts in later, but this just kind of adds to the effect. And from here on in, it's just kind of additional features. So paint the nose, the wee stripe down his muzzle, some dots where his whiskers come out. Because of the way the prosthetic was sitting, it was kind of forcing me to frown, so I just enhanced my frown lines with the same eyeshadow from before. And then I just applied some mascara and a pair of falsies that I'd kind of cut the ends off, sprayed the lashes together with some hairspray and just applied that on the outer corner. And now finally for the eyebrows and the beard / sideburns. So I'm first applying some Pros-Aide, and then I made a mix of green, white and grey crepe hair. I didn't include this in the video because then it would have been like 30 minutes long, but we move. So you just want to apply Pros-Aide, let it dry and apply your crepe hair. You kind of cut it in a straight line and then place it on once it's dry. once I'd finished filming, decided that there was too much white in this side of my beard, so I went back and like changed it for photos, but you get the gist. So yeah, just press it in, and then I also used some Spirit Gum to stick down some wee bits here and there, just because I felt like the Pros-Aide wasn't sticking enough. But yeah, then you just want to style it into the shape that you want, just using some hairspray and kind of moulding it with your hands. You can see that's what I did with the eyebrows, to kind of curl it into that shape. And then do that same thing with your sideburns. No, it's so ridiculous. And then I just kind of chopped into it, being very careful, just to get the shape and the length that I wanted. And then all you want to do is chuck on a Santa hat and a pair of funky contacts, and that is you done. As always, everything that I have used will be listed down below, as well as all of my social media links. Make sure you give me a like and a follow on them, and make sure you subscribe to this channel and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any future uploads. I hope you have all enjoyed this video. I really enjoyed showing you the full process of it, and I think this is definitely an improvement on last year's Grinch. So we will see what next year's Grinch brings. I hope you have all enjoyed, have a Merry Christmas, and make sure you stay safe this festive season, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye! Let's turn myself into an egg again. Woo! Sweet Caroline, bum bum bum. Instant facelift. This is totally normal. I'm a Grinch. Yeah. I'm slowly going crazy, going crazy, going crazy. Since you pushed my love aside, I'm out of my head. Merry Christmas, everybody.